Okay, I think we've gotten to the point where we've seen enough of Dutchtown, and I want to get started on the other side of town. We could call it Irishtown, but I'd rather not. What they were mostly were Scotch-Irish, which were Scots people who had been imported into Ireland by the English king. There were good reasons why the old town was separated. I mean, first of all, there was politics, then there was religion. I mean, those two would be enough to keep people apart. But added to that mix, you have language. Most of the Dutch were still speaking some variety of German. Language in their church was German. Where they met for their political meetings in their tavern, they spoke German there. Whereas on the other side of town, Main Street and the part toward the east, they spoke English. You know, language, religion, the people on the Irish or Presbyterian side were Presbyterians over toward the east, Main Street in the east, and the Dutch town were Lutherans. We speak about the language, religion, and politics, another big issue. The guys on the Main Street and the east side of town were Federalist, favoring a strong central government, whereas the ones over in Dutchtown were Democratic Republicans, which was, we would call them Democrats today. They really didn't want the government messing around in their lives very much. And I think it's time we take a look now at some of what we can call Irishtown, but it's the other side of town. We are now looking at things on Main Street in the present tense. We're looking west on Pittsburgh Street, where Main Street goes across. We see some familiar things like the courthouse to the right in the middle, the tower of the Cope Building. And we are going to travel back in time a bit here to give you a look at what I came up with in an attempt, a very crude attempt, to show what the center of town might have looked like then. And this was pretty much the center of town. There was a diamond in the middle of the intersection of Main Street and Pittsburgh Street. The Drum Inn sat over here, and I only know that it had 3 stories, and it was made of brick. Across here was the Market Building, where a lot of transactions were made. And I am not proud to tell you that slaves were bought and sold there. Here we have the courthouse. And down here, a man named Williams lived who made saddles, and he made them right there in his house. And where he lived, we're dealing very much with a cottage industry. And we take another look at Main Street. Here we have Main Street going north. This is the place where Ottoman Street goes across. And I want to point out the fact that I make these things only in an attempt to try to give some form to what it might have looked like in the old town. I don't know, and probably nobody alive knows. Photography had not been invented yet until 1839, and that was in Europe. The earliest views I ever saw of anything photographic in Greensburg was from the 1850s. We're looking at the corner here at number 1. That was a tavern and inn. The sign of the General Washington hung out front, and it was there for a good number of years. We go up to number 2, where Alexander McKinney made shoes, and he made things right there. That was his home and manufactory. We go up to number 3. 3 was a place where at least 2 people I can recall who were coppersmiths and tinsmiths lived and worked there. Interesting is the fact that the coppersmiths made the stills in the old town, and stills were very important because they made the whiskey, and whiskey was very important as a commodity that could be sold. It was almost a medium of exchange. And another interesting fact is number 4. A guy named Wells was living here, right above the place where the stills were made. Wells was the excise collector, the guy who collected taxes on those who made whiskey. And you can't help wondering if he was watching who were buying the stills. Number 5, this was a place where 2 brothers lived and worked. Their name was Herwick. Joseph Herwick was a wheelwright. His brother William Herwick made clocks. As we come down, we see a place where there was a carpenter named Robert Cooper. At number 7, there was a fellow named Isaac who made hats. And all these fellows did what they did right where they lived. On the corner was a store. It was originally a place that a man named Carr owned. Around 1928, it came into the ownership of the Brady family, first James, and then later his son, Hugh Y. Brady. And they stayed in business into the 1850s and further. And I think we've said enough about the beginning of talking about Old Main Street. We'll shut this down.